Welcome back to the #1 home improvement business YouTube channel in the entire world. Today you're going to learn why it's the #1, probably the only one, that is catered to the self-employed home service provider. Now before we get started, I want to tell you about something I've been planning for months and keep forgetting. There will be a link in all new handyman business videos going forward of some extra education. It's my education. I spend about an hour and 10 minutes on the road every single day, and I'm always going through YouTube trying to find something of value for the business. Not labor related or skill related, but more money related. How to get more production out of myself, what to do with my money, things of that nature. A lot of it is motivation, not just to go work hard, but motivation to spend your money wisely and good places to put it. I'm not affiliated with any of these videos or the people in these videos or the guys or the YouTubers behind it. They don't know who I am. I really don't know who they are. There's a lot of bullshit out there, and a lot of it is just somebody repeating kind of standard practices. And I'm looking for something that I don't already know. And it's also going to be something that I may know, but it's good to hear again and will be of value to you. This week's topic of discussion comes from Patreon. Been having a lot of good back and forth with people who have recently joined Patreon. This morning we were talking about decks and post bases and beams, things like that. The question I'm going to read to you today is a business question. The reason I chose it to put on the channel is because it's very, very relevant. I'll throw another very in there, a couple varies. Tremendously relevant to this business, as I've experienced it. I've got friends that have experienced it, and you will probably come into this situation. Okay, here we go. Handyman, I love your content. I've always enjoyed watching your videos for help and advice, plus I think you're clever and funny. Thank you. I have a question about being a handyman and getting hired as a contractor for a company that maintains and fixes a chain of grocery stores. I recently had a discussion with a friend of mine. He works full-time for the company, and I told him what I do, essentially what you do, but I've only been doing it for 2 years professionally. The company he works for is in desperate need of a handyman, essentially, that can catch up on work this friend of mine can't get done. Doesn't sound too good for him. I spoke to the person doing the hiring, that's a key word there, hiring, who also dispatches all the work for these grocery stores, and she's very motivated for me to join as a part-time contractor. It's another key word, the contractor. What I know is they offer one-way mileage at 45 cents per kilometer. Kilometer? It's Canadian. It says, sorry, I'm Canadian. She said $40 to $45 per hour for the labor plus materials. And I think there was a $45 truck payment too. Not sure how that works. The mileage is okay, and I'm going to try to request to work within a 30-minute drive of my house. I'm also going to be asking for $50 per hour. I don't do per hour work, but if I try to calculate my time and cost of business, I shoot for $75 an hour. This is in his own business. Now, I think I'm also going to ask for a minimum job charge of $75, so an hour and a half minimum labor. They seem to keep meticulous timing of when you're actually working, kind of like a punch clock done at the store. If you have advice for me, I would appreciate it. This will be the first time I will be working as a contractor. So I want to make sure I get paid properly and don't leave money on the table. This is also an important part. To note, I will not be giving up my business or current clientele. This will be additional work to add to my current business. He's been in business for 2 years. He hasn't fully got his network big enough to have a surplus of work. I don't know how old he is. I don't know what his financial responsibility is. I don't know anything about Canadian small business tax laws. Talk about some things to consider, both here in the United States and in Canada. The majority of the value that we have is not our skill set. It is the ability to get the work. The guys who bring the work to a company get paid more than the guys that do the work in a company. So that there is a huge section of your value or the money that you make, the ability to get the work. This guy knows that. You can't expect to get paid the same hourly wage when you're doing a contract hourly labor employee, because they're bringing the work to you. And that is one of the highest values of every job. Another consideration is, does this company supply any of the administrative tasks that you normally have to do? Are they paying any of your insurance? Are they paying any of your taxes, like a payroll taxes, the small business tax, which is two sides of the FICA tax down here in the United States, which is about 15.5%. But in general, you got to pay quite a bit of taxes and insurances if you're going to be self-employed. It's not a huge dollar figure in the grand scheme of things over the course of an entire year. $1 million policy is around $1,200. $500,000 policy, commercial liability, is around $450 a year. Luckily in my state, I do not have to have workman's comp insurance. You can't claim it on yourself. So there's a waiver that you get out of that in my state, which is good. A lot of states, you have to have workman's comp on yourself. It's craziness. In his questions, he states they pay for materials. My other question would be, what about the time for traveling to get the materials? Are you on the clock, or are you just getting mileage? That's another thing to consider. If I was him, I would definitely take it. Only 2 years in, great opportunity. The dollar per hour is decent. The experience is even more valuable. You're invited to learn a whole new industry. He says that he does what I do, which is all residential. There's a lot of different things that go on inside of a restaurant, a grocery store. As I said earlier, I've got a friend of mine who is basically a handyman for a large chain of restaurants. This franchise, I think there's about 11 to 12 restaurants, and he is constantly on the move. And a lot of times he's working at night because he can't work during business hours. So I don't know if that's something that he would have to do. So this guy I know, he gets paid from the time he leaves his house. He is on the clock, and he gets mileage. He even gets paid for time doing paperwork. What did he say? Like TPS reports, expense reports, sitting at home. Even loading his truck with tools, he's getting paid. He is ordering stuff online from his couch, from Granger. He's on the clock. So it's a pretty good gig. It's not a very high hourly wage, but the work comes to him. He does none of the small business admin stuff. He does get paid for the expense reports and things like that. He keeps track of his own time with an app on his phone. They completely trust him. So the situation I ran into that is similar. Many years ago, before YouTube, I was actually loading a tile saw out of my truck. That tile saw right there. And a guy comes up to me who lives across the street, and he's a contractor. He says, I've seen you loading tools in and out. Do you do construction work? Because I got a contract to rebuild all the decks at this apartment complex. There's hundreds of these decks. Would you like to come down to the office and go over the plans, and I can tell you what we pay? That was a 1099 contractor. You are still 100% self-employed. They just give you a 1099 at the end of the year. So I went down, he gave me his pitch, and it was a full-time gig. Unlike the guy that submitted the question, I believe it was a part-time gig for him. So I would have to focus just on the building decks, ripping down decks and rebuilding decks, ripping down decks and rebuilding decks. What happens when the decks are done? I mean, there was a couple other contractors because he couldn't just have one guy doing hundreds of these. So I chose not to take that opportunity. Luckily, it worked out for me. I landed a couple big jobs right after that, and I think those did make it to YouTube. It was a bathroom and a kitchen remodel that I made some good money off of and got a lot of referrals out of. So I say go for it. There will be probably a certain point where your clientele grows and you have to make a decision. Do I continue with the grocery store type maintenance? Which it could lead into your own business. This friend of mine, I said, man, do you know how much you could be making if you did this as a contractor? You may come to a crossroads where you have to either quit working as a self-employed handyman and go with the grocery store, or vice versa. I know this has come up in a lot of guys' career. So please put your experience down below in the comments and tell me what I forgot. A lot of times I'm going back through and editing this and I'm like, oh, I should have said this. Oh, I forgot about that. Someone's going to give me hell about this. Go check out the link of the day. I'm not sure what it is. I've got a whole bunch of them saved up. I just save them to my favorites when I come across a good one. So I'll be posting those links in the description. You listen to them just like I do when you're on the way to work, on the way home. Turn off the crazy news and listen to what I listen to. Go down, join Patreon. It's $1 a month, and you get to ask me questions, and you get access to all the live streams. So when we do a live stream, it's only live, and then it goes to Patreon about 4 or 5 days later. Goodbye.